All right, I call to order this meeting of the King George County Board of Supervisors. We will start with an invocation by Mr. Collins, and then we'll have Trail Life Troop Virginia 1720 come up and lead us in the pledge.
Bow your head in prayer, please. Dear Lord, we praise you for this beautiful spring day. We get to come together as a community to make decisions and make our community better. We praise you for all your glory and what you've provided to us in our lives and the lives of others in our community. We ask for wisdom and we ask for peace. In your name we pray. Amen. You can come closer than that.
Yeah, they're saying this way, so they can't burn it. See you.
You got to divide in half. Just kidding.
All right, please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Collins, for the invocation, and thank you, Trail Life Troop 1720, for leading us in the pledge. I appreciate you guys coming out and participating. Thank you. All right, do we have any amendments to the agenda, Mr. Miller?
No, sir.
Okay. Then we will open the floor for public comment. Please remember, comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person in order to afford everyone an opportunity to speak. If comments relate to a specific public hearing item, we ask that you offer those comments at the time of the public hearing. And please, when you come up, provide your name and your address.
All right, so my name's Julianne. I live on Village Lane. We have a couple questions concerning this rehabilitation. First, why is it a nursing home? It's zoned as a hospital, C2. I think I have the answer, but I'd like more explanation. We were at a Board of Supervisors meeting when the Service Authority said that we have 47,000 gallons of water left. Pyramid Healthcare requested 20,000. But if you do the math, it doesn't match. For a nursing home, for the amount of beds they want, which is 100, you have to have a 200 gallon per day flow rate. For a hospital, you have to have a 300 gallon per bed flow rate. So when you do the math on that, for a nursing home, the total is 20,000 gallons per day, and the hospital is 30,000 gallons per day. Would you agree on that? But there's an equation here that wasn't brought in, and it's called flow rate and fire rate. So you have to do the math of 250% times the average flow rate plus whatever's required for the fire flow. So if you do that math, so 20,000 times the 250% is 5,000 gallons per day, and that does not include the fire flow rate. And that's for the nursing home. If you have a hospital, the total water demand is 30,000 gallons per day times the flow rate of 250, and that's 75,000 gallons per day, plus whatever the flow rate is. And this does not include any irrigation that this Pyramid Healthcare wants to do, so that doesn't include watering their lawns. And if you want to know where I got this information, I got it off the King George County website. As in the last meeting, we asked if the 2018 requirements were accurate, and the Service Authority said, yes, it has not been updated, so this is accurate from the King George County website. So what this means is we do not have enough water in our area to support this kind of building. Secondly, if this building is built, we will not have enough water for anything else to be built. A house, a Chick-fil-A, another tobacco shop. There won't be any water. There won't be water for anything. This project is going to use 70,000 gallons of water per day. And that would be on the second sheet. So I think, and this handout here is actually from the building plan that was actually submitted into the county, which these numbers don't even correspond with the numbers that are on the King George County website. So you guys, please read this so that way you can understand that the water required, we do not meet that need.
Thank you, Ms. Sturts, and thank you for the papers. Anyone else?
Kim Dodge, 6150 McCarthy Drive. I don't know, it was last meeting or the meeting before that, I asked where were these patients coming from for the pyramid? I guess it's a drug rehab. And I thought they were coming from within the state of Virginia, and that it was a relocation thing to relocate people that were having struggles with drug rehab, to relocate them here to King George. I have found out that it's actually people coming from Maryland. So my question is, why is this not being built in the state of Maryland? I don't understand why we're relocating Maryland's people that need help over here to Virginia. That's my question.
Hello, my name is Gail Becker, and I live in Monmouth Village Housing Development on Fern Court. I have a few things that I'd just like to point out. Listed on Pyramid's application for its Bowie location in 2022, 1,274 St. Mary's County applications were denied due to lack of available space in their Maryland locations. Pyramid will not be serving the King George residents. The majority of patients will be coming in from Maryland, excuse me, including violent criminals under a Maryland law intended to help addicted offenders get drug treatment to win an early release, allowing violent criminals convicted of armed robbery, carjackings, shootings, and even attempted murder to have their sentences reduced, sometimes by years, by agreeing to sign up for drug rehab. Cases in point. In February of 2017, an armed robber served 3 years of an 8-year sentence, ordered by the judge to be released to an authorized rehab facility. He promptly escaped from the unsecured facility, stealing bags belonging to other patients, and ran out the door. He then jumped into a waiting car and left the facility. They continued to search for him. Just recently, the St. Mary's County Sheriff's Department is seeking the whereabouts of an inmate, 34 years old, absconding from an authorized residential treatment facility. Previously, she was held in the Detention and Rehabilitation Center under a no bond status for theft, $100 to under $1,500, theft, $1,500 to under $25,000, a theft scheme, and robbery. Our concerns are, in actuality, becoming realized in the examples of these two cases in point regarding this facility and the safety of the surrounding community residents involving patients leaving unsupervised and without medical consent. Thank you.
Anyone else here for public comment? Mr. Dines, do we have anyone online?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Did any of my colleagues receive any correspondence to be read into the record? Okay, then I will close the floor for public comment and we will move on to reports of members of the boards. Ms. Binder.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everyone who got up and speak. I know sometimes it can be hard to get up and do public speaking, but I thank you for coming up and expressing your concerns and giving us material to study. I appreciate it. I also want to give a shout out to the local garden clubs that have done a really nice job beautifying our King George. Even though the tulips came out a little early, they look gorgeous, and I really appreciate the effort of our citizens to help beautify King George, and hopefully the tulips last a little longer than and make it to Garden Week, which is going to be a really nice focus on King George. We were supposed to have a Garden Week in 2020. That was one of our many things that got canceled due to COVID, so it's nice it's back around, and our frontage of King George, our main area, it looks really nice with the beautiful tulips. I want to also a slight shout out to UMW's Innovation Challenge. They had a base partnership. I know it was, I should have mentioned it in my last report, but they're having their high school event later this month, and King George High School is one of, I think, 22 teams that are vying for the championship. And the college challenge was first time they did it, but what was neat about it is that these students came from even, I think, Johns Hopkins and MIT, and there was a scholarship opportunity, and it was quite substantial to the winning team. So I think it's a cool partnership between UMW, Stahlgren campus, and the base to try to help promote STEM for college students and our local regional high school students. Let's see. I have a couple of questions for Mr. Miller, and one of them is in your board report. Can you supply an update on the status of the study on the old middle school and the courthouse, when we should be receiving that? And I think that's all I have in my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Binder. Mr. Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone after spring break. I hope you had an enjoyable spring break, except for those first couple of days. It was a little chilly. So, Ms. Dodge, you came last time and you came this time and you asked the same question: where are they coming from for Pyramid? Well, the answer is they're coming from everywhere, not just Maryland. Are they coming from King George? Probably not, but they're definitely coming from everywhere, and they're coming from penal institutions and everywhere else. So that's where they're coming from. And Ms. Becker, you know, your comments are on point. You're right. And Julianne, so Mr. Miller, so do they have enough water for this facility down there? You being the administrator of the water.
So based on the review of our county engineering, yes. And so we'll obviously look at the information, but the capacity for that area, which does not include the naval base. I think that's one thing that people are thinking, that is including the naval base. That is not including the naval base, because we don't have anything to do with the naval base. Is 47,000 daily. The proposed usage that was calculated by our engineering staff was 20,000 per day for Pyramid Health. So that leaves still 27,000, which is adequate capacity. If there's some other information that's been provided, I think that we've tried to have a meeting to go through what the analysis that our engineering staff did, and I think we just couldn't come to a common time when we meet with Ms. Dirtz and some of the other residents. But that's what we're trying to get accomplished. This is new information. I've not seen this. So,
Given this information, it is interesting that there's two different there's numbers from that she brings here, and there's numbers that the county has. And I would be extremely interested in finding out what's correct, including the flow rate for the fire flow.
Yes,
Um,
sir. And we'll get you a report on that to the whole board.
Could I get that information within 7 days?
Oh, certainly. I will get with Mr. Young and we'll provide the entire board and you as well that information.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. And just when you answer the question of this information, and the question that Julianne had is there's not enough water. I'd like to have an answer if there is enough water when you get all that information together. Thank you. So just for the folks down there, this member of the board and other members of the board have been working for a solution. There's no promises on any solution. But so if you do nothing, you have 100% chance of failure. Right now we have a 50% chance of failure or to do something. So I'd rather go with the 50% and hope we can help the folks down there, but there's no guarantees. You know that. But we do need for you to continue to, let us know what's on your minds and be a part of the solution. So it's not just a problem for you, it's a problem for the entire community because there's no good reason to have pyramid in that community, period. I've already said that, publicly 1,000 times. So given that, we're still working on a solution. Don't know if we're going to be successful, but at least we have a 50% shot at it, right? If you do nothing, you have a 100% chance of not winning anything. So that's all my public comments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Collins. Mrs. Kupka?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank everyone for joining us in person this evening, and especially everyone who provided their comments. I think that Mr. Collins answered some of the questions already. Ms. Dodge's question is everywhere and anywhere. Ms. Becker, thank you very much for your examples that you provided. And Ms. Dirtz, thank you for the water data. Mr. Miller, can you tell me, please, I requested 2 meetings ago consensus of the board to direct staff to send a letter to Pyramid Healthcare with her questions. Have we received, first of all, did that letter go out? I know staff was working on it at some point because I was asked for what her questions were, what I wrote down in my book. But so did that go out and have we received a response from them yet?
Yes and yes. Yes, the letter did go out and the response that we received is that Mr. Davis, who made the presentation, was going to escalate it up to his superiors to get us an answer back. But we have not gotten an answer back.
Do we have that in an email?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Mind sending that to all of my colleagues? I'm assuming there'd be consensus for all of you would want to see that. Yeah, if you could please
Yes,
have
ma'am.
that sent to all of us, because we need to be able to let them know where we're at on that too. Thank you very much. And then I'll just be brief. Yesterday, I participated in a call with our staff, Mr. Miner, Director of Economic Development and Tourism, and Mr. Clark, Director of Parks and Recreation, and GWRC staff. And Ms. Binder and I spoke about this prior because we both serve on George Washington Regional Commission regarding the GWRC Rural Work Plan for next fiscal year. And so what this is, GWRC has a limited pot of money that they can set aside for each locality for Caroline County and King George County for rural work plan transportation planning, basically. And so what they're going to be putting in the plan to bring forward to GWRC for our community, and I think it's great because both of those departments will benefit, and there are initiatives that we've been working on as well as one that we've received some comment about. One is we're trying to develop a second industrial park down South 301. So they're going to be assisting Mr. Miner and his staff in developing what that road access plan looks like, and hopefully helping them apply for economic development road access grant funding to try to get the road done into the proposed second industrial park and like a cul-de-sac at the end that loops out. So that's the first project. The second project would be access and egress improvements for both Roseland Road up at the top where the bridge is and Barnesfield Park, because with the advent of the new bridge, it's it's going to continue to get worse. It's pretty dicey when you're trying to turn right to go south down 301 from either of those roads. So I'm really grateful to them for their assistance in those two things. And then they always have a third plan that usually doesn't get finished. It usually gets rolled over to the next fiscal year. And that's going to be to assist our staff with future smart scale applications, provide technical assistance. And in particular, they'd be looking at possibly the Eden Drive crossover that I know Ms. Binder has a great deal of concern about, as do I. And they would work out, coordinate that with the entry and exit plans for Ralph Bunch High School in the future. So that's very good news. And that's all I have for this evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Kupka. Mr. Stonehill?
Good evening, and thank you. Just wanted to say thanks for everybody that came out to speak. And like Mr. Collins said, you got to come out and try something. If you don't try anything, it's going to be a zero for sure. So it's good that everybody is coming out, and certainly appreciate it. For my report, just last Thursday, we had our first budget meeting, Company One, that we all attended and had the school there. That's our biggest issue that we have budget-wise, since they take the biggest bite of the pie. And this is just the start, so hopefully we can get that all taken care of properly. And the only other thing last, I have Mr. Miller. Again, I've been asked about the offices here in our building. The sign on the door says 8 to 4:30, but some of our offices are not open at 8, and some of our offices are closing at 4 o'clock. So if we could get that straightened out, if the sign on the door and the sign on all the boxes say that the offices are open until 4:30, they need to be open until 4:30. So if you can get that taken care of, and if there's some kind of holdover about deep cleaning for COVID or whatever, that ship has sailed. So I think the signs on the door need to match where we are. So if you could look into that, that would be great. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stonehill. I'd just like to say thank you for everyone coming out. Ms. Sturts, thank you for the documentation. I do appreciate it. Review it. Ms. Dodge, I think we mentioned it last time, but yeah, it will be people coming from everywhere. So that and why they're building here. At the end of the day, you'd have to ask them why they're making those business decisions. That's not something that we chose to do, obviously. And Ms. Becker, thank you. I appreciate the information you share in regards to kind of criminal activities that do happen and those challenges that are coming out from there, and obviously being cognizant of what could be happening if it is moving forward here. So I appreciate knowing that, and I'm sure Sheriff's Department probably appreciates understanding those possible kinds of impacts, just to be prepared if that is the way it's going to go. So thank you. Other than that, as Mr. Stonehill said, we did have our initial budget meeting on March 9th. I'd like to say thank you to the schools for providing us with their initial budget request. We're looking to have a joint meeting with the schools on the 30th, I believe, if I remember correctly. So that'll be another budget work session for people who may want to listen in on that part of the budget in particular. Obviously, it's the largest portion of our budget request. And we'll also have a meeting this 23rd for another budget work session. So if you have the availability, please come out and attend those. And that's all I have. So we'll close reports and we'll move on to the consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Constitutional officers. Mr. Jones.
Greetings, Mr. Chairman and colleagues. February's, excuse me, receipts and expenditures report, county began in the general fund with a balance of $39,067,929.81. We received in revenue $14,624,182.66 and dispersed $15,457,190.61, leaving with an ending balance of $38,234,921.86. Since the last time we've given you a report, FY22 has been closed by the Finance Department. We have since closed the months July 2022 through January 2023. All of those months have been reconciled to the general ledger and have been closed by finance, and we anticipate February to be closed by the end of the week. So.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Did anyone have any questions? Thank you for coming out, sir. Mr. Miller, could you make sure that that is added to the minutes? Thank you, sir. I believe Ms. Hart was not available this evening, so she was, I know she'd sent out the information. Did you have it to provide?
I do.
Okay.
I believe we also shared with is that at their table as well? So the monthly report, this was submitted by Ms. Hart. Commissioner Revenue, the March 23rd or the March 2023 monthly report. Cigarette packs sold in January were 262,806. Year to date from July 2022 to the present, the revenue from stamps sold is $1,332,040. On the 15th of March, 23 at 9 a.m., the cigarette inventory, which was 6,149 packs that were seized, went live for auction on Public Surplus, and that is a www.publicsurplus.com SMS King George VA list current. The starting bid was 6,000, and it will remain live for 2 weeks unless there are no bids received. So, and I know that the sheriff is here as well and can speak to this as well, but this is what Ms. Hart had provided.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Deanna Price and Deputy Simon conducted a cigarette tax inspection on all the stores in King George selling tobacco. They found all the stores were in compliance with the exception of one store in Dahlgren. According to Deanna, the store was not submitting their required cigarette inventory sheets, which are due by the 20th of each month. Deputy Simon and Deanna contacted Deputy Commonwealth Attorney Charlie Clark and advised him of the violation and discussed their course of action. They spoke with the store manager, who stated the responsibility for the inventory was the manager's job. Deputy Simon called the district manager, who stated he had no knowledge of the requirement of the required cigarette inventory form. Deanna told him that she would email him the form and it was due on the 20th of every month. Deputy Simon also told him that the store was in violation of the county code and the store manager could be issued a summons for the violation if they did not submit the paperwork. The district manager stated that he would make sure that the paperwork was completed. A few days later, Deanna verified that that paperwork had been submitted, so they're essentially in compliance. Also, after receiving several complaints about underage purchases of vapes and tobacco products at several tobacco stores in the county, the Sheriff's Office, conducted Operation Vaporize and went to 5 tobacco stores and sent an underage person in an attempt to purchase vape tobacco products. Sadly, 4 of the 5 stores were in violation and did not ask for identification to verify the person's age. Those 4 stores were issued summonses for selling to underage persons. On a side note, the Sheriff's Office had gone into these stores at least a month prior and advised them of the complaints we were receiving and told them that and instructed them that they need to start checking IDs and that we would be back with underage people to see if they were in compliance. And like I said, 4 out of the 5 were not, but there was one store that was. So I can entertain any questions if you have it.
Thank you, Sheriff. I appreciate it. Did anyone have any questions?
So Sheriff, you gave them opportunity to comply and they didn't comply, so you issued them a summons.
Correct.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Report from the county attorney.
So, and after Miss Smith's departure, I was the acting FOIA coordinator for a couple months there. I was happy to pass the torch to Miss Fish at the beginning of this month. As part of that, I did a training for Miss Fish and some other staff members. And in my preparation for that training, I reviewed some of the legislation that's been newly enacted. There are a few fairly minor changes to FOIA, but probably the most significant one that I found, which is sitting on the governor's desk. It's not, he could still veto it until the 27th, but it passed unanimously through the Senate and the House, so I suspect it's unlikely to be vetoed. It requires a written policy for FOIA costs. So that's something that Ms. Fish and I intend to work on and make some recommendations to Mr. Miller on a written policy. It's likely just going to kind of formalize what's already done, which is to charge the time associated, the staff time associated that can be billed. For example, my time in reviewing things for legal matters cannot be billed, but the time of other staff that's required to pull together the FOIA. So that would be a new law that would take effect July 1, and I'm going to have some more summaries of any other pertinent legislation coming up. And then in your agenda packet, we have a resolution that's requesting that VDOT accept Orchid Lane and I believe it's Second Road, Alder Drive from Oakwood Estates Section 1. They have been completed, we believe, to VDOT specifications. And so there is a proposed resolution in your packet with some information on the lengths of those roads, the particular location. With the resolution, if it carries, would request that VDOT accept those roads into the public system.
Thank you. Since that's in the Shiloh District, Oakwood Estates, so these roads do meet 100% the VDOT specifications. I just want to make sure on that.
That's my understanding. The recommendation of community development was to go ahead and have VDOT accept these roads.
We've had some issues in the past with other developers, so I just want to make sure that those just 2 portions of that are fine.
Anyone else have any questions for Mrs. Lackey?
I do, but not on the resolution, do on the FOIA. So you want to do the motion on the resolution?
I'll entertain a motion, sure.
Make a motion to approve the resolution requesting that certain segments of Alder Drive and Orchard Lane in the Oakwood Estate Section 1 subdivision be added to the Virginia Department of Transportation into the secondary system of the state highways.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. Mr. Collins, you had a question?
Yes, please. So, Ms. Lackey, you mentioned a policy on fees for FOIA. That policy will be brought forward to the board for approval. Is that correct?
Yes, at this point in time, the legal requirement would not take effect until July 1. So we're just in the process of staff starting to work on recommendations. It's my understanding that the sheriff's office has also kind of kicked off some thoughts on how they're going to bill their costs. So we are kind of, our first plan of attack is to kind of see what they're doing and compare notes and come back with a recommendation.
So, but you don't have to charge for FOIA. There's no mandate on that. Matter of fact, the section says that it can be waived, correct?
So the policy could waive certain requests. Some localities do not charge for minimal time and that's in effect, in certain ways in King George, people who come and ask, a question at one of the staff members' desks, if they come to community development, they want to look at a file, like typically they can look at those files that are public records. If they make reasonable efforts to make an appointment, they're not charged for the very minimal staff time that's required to assist somebody normally at a counter. But there are times and occasions where there's significant staff time taken to process FOIA requests. So that'll be a consideration for this board based on some of the recommendations from those who handle those types of requests.
So the whole idea of FOIA is not to be cumbersome to the citizens to obtain information from their local or state or federal government. And anytime you put a fee on something, you make it cumbersome. So I would hope that our policy would consider not making it as cumbersome to get public information. There's charging a citizen for the information. It just doesn't sit well with me. I understand that when you might have to produce, 7,000 documents, but generally I don't think of any. Matter of fact, when the people do a public comment, they're basically making a FOIA. Miss Julianne asked, is there enough water? That's basically a FOIA request. It's a question of the government authority to answer a question. And she didn't say FOIA, but it's basically a FOIA. So anytime a citizen asks a question, it's basically a FOIA through to us or to you or to anybody in the county government. So I would hope that we wouldn't start making it more cumbersome for people to obtain information. And when you start talking about charging people for information they deserve, it does not. I think transparency is more important than money. So that's not as a statement, a comment. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Ms. Lackey? Okay. Do you have anything else, Ms. Lackey?
That's all I have. I will mention that since actually it started before Ms. Fish was on board, when I started handling the FOIA duties, I've also started tracking FOIAs. So I'll also have some data for you all so you can kind of see the staff time and effort that goes into those transactions.
Thank you. Yes.
One more comment, please. So the staff is here to serve the public. So therefore, there's a cost to serve the public, which is paid for through tax revenue. Just want to throw that in. Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to presentations and reports. So I know we have Mr. Tom Inez here for All Points Broadband. It's nice to have you here, sir. Thank you for coming out.
Presentation. Great. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for this opportunity to provide an update. Also, thank you for some recent notifications out in the public. We've seen an uptick in pre-registrations on our website, so I appreciate that. So we gave an update for the whole project on Friday, and I'm going to run through that presentation here with some extra color for King George, and then open the floor to any questions and stop me at any time. So go to the next slide. Can we go to the next slide, please? So in the project status right now, we're focused on three major topics. One is to make the middle mile infrastructure in place. This is primarily the Dominion construction. You've seen a lot of that work going on right now. A lot of the construction is complete. Not fully complete yet, but mostly complete, and I've seen it on the road out front. There's a Dominion line, and we attach to their fiber for our laterals, and they participate in this program through a utility middle mile statute at the state level. A couple of things outstanding for the remainder of their project, whether it's a water crossing or a specialty permit or the final splicing matrices from All Points, where we tell them exactly where we want to splice into the network. Those are going to be the longest lead time items, and the the last remaining tidbits, but most of the construction is complete for Dominion. The second thing that we're focused on is the utility pole make-ready process. So every time we want to attach to a pole, and we've surveyed 3,000 poles, we're going to attach to 2,300 poles in King George. Every time we do that, we have to send a crew out to the field, we do the surveying, we tell the electric utility provider, whether it's Dominion or Northern Neck Electric Co-op, everything that's on the pole and exactly where we want to attach and all the changes to that pole. All of that process is completed on the survey side. We've submitted the applications for 99% of those poles, and 16% of them are all the way through the make-ready process. So it's a lot of progress in King George. Still a lot of make-ready construction to go before you see our fiber. We've made a lot of progress in there. It is an order of magnitude more poles that have been requested than either Dominion or an NEC have seen in these areas. We made a lot of progress. It was a slow start, as you all know, but we're at a good pace now. I think we're doing about 1,500 pole applications a week overall in the project, and we're on track to keep the project on track. Final thing that we want is to have a significant queue of constructible miles so we can hand it off to our fiber vendors. When we started this project, we thought there would be more make-ready construction and more fiber construction happening simultaneously. What we've learned is that these crews who come in and build just the fiber, they want all the make-ready done, they want the permits done, so we can hand them 70 or 80 miles to do at a time as opposed to 10 or 20, which is what we thought originally. Due to some labor constraints, there's a lot of construction going on in the state and across the country, so we have to deliver whatever these crews want. So if they want 70 or 80 miles at a time, that's what we're going to put together. But it means that we spend more time in the engineering and make ready before they begin their construction. Another topic that we're focused on is the OSP, that means outside plant, so the fiber, the electronics, the make ready materials. The supply chain and our inventory has been a big focus. Everything is on track, everything is on schedule for the supply chain. We're ordering well in advance, not only for our main network, but also for the devices that go into customers' homes. That is one thing that we can do that doesn't require a lot of outside vendor input. We order it from our distributor. Since COVID, there's no more just-in-time inventory. Now we're planning at least 6 months out to have it on our inventory and our books and at our distributor. Main warehouse for our distributors in Ashland. We also share warehouse space with NNEC down in Warsaw. We do want to have some media events for you all in the near term, so email me or work through Mr. Miller or Mr. Miner. We'll get you out there for some make-ready construction, some middle mile construction. Send me an email in the next 2 weeks and we'll have the crews out there. I think last week they were on Passapatanzi Road doing make-ready on NNEC poles. So we can have you out there anytime you want, do some photos and see what's happening in the county. There's a lot of communication between All Points and Dominion and NNEC. We meet at various department levels on a weekly basis, and we're keeping that make-ready process, keeping the foot on the pedal there. We brought in the Timmons Group, which is a major regional vendor for these types of infrastructure projects. They're our lead skilled labor vendor. They've added about 35 or 40 FTEs this year just to our projects. They're keeping us on track in the GIS department, whether that's desktop or out in the field. And so we're happy to have them. It's been a new addition to the team, keeping everything on track. And finally, last week on March 15th, we had DHCD do a quarterly site visit. They bring in their project manager, they ask a bunch of questions, they go out in the field, see some construction, see the inventory. Everything went well on the site visit. 3 of our 6 milestones for the grant have been completed. The second milestone, which is a 2B, that's overall project construction, we're back on track. We were lagging behind there for the last 2 quarters, but we're back on track there. And the final 2, the most important for you all, is the customer installs. We're getting there. We're just not exactly where we'd hoped to be at this point, but the project is still on track for completion in September. Go next slide. So in March, you probably saw the make-ready construction really pick up in King George, and it's going to accelerate again in April. This is for a regional update, so there's some other counties in here as well. We want to do the network lighting event in King George in August. The network is going to be substantially complete in September for phase 1 and phase 2. If you remember, we have about 740 locations in phase 2. That's not technically due till next year, according to DHCD, but we're building all of that with phase 1. So even though phase 1 is coming in at the end of the project timeline, the phase 2 is all going to be several months early. December, well, will be done in December, so that applies to other counties. Let's move on to the next one. So what happens for your constituents about 90 days in advance, they're going to get a notice that we're coming in 90 days. And we don't really know exactly which fiber service area of the 5 in King George. We don't really know exactly which one's going to be lit until about 90 days out. So if they've pre-registered on our website, they'll get an email. Even if they don't pre-register, they're going to get some flyers. They're going to see yard signs. They're going to see some door hangers. And depending on where we are in the cycle, before or after release the sales, they'll get a different message. Like, we're coming in 90 days, or get ready to sign up. We're going to be there in 30 days. Or we just missed your neighbors signing up. You can do it now. So the message at each of those 4 mailers is going to be slightly different. And of course, even if they don't sign up on day 1, they can sign up in perpetuity. Right? The program never ends. They can always sign up for the service. Also want to point out that our focus is on the unserved locations that are specifically in the grant. We get a lot of inquiries outside of the project area. Folks want to sign up. Our focus is on the unserved locations that are in the grant. So we keep track of people who've requested service outside of the grant, and we'll get to them afterwards, but our real focus is on the people who are unserved in the grant area. We'll also do some social media campaigns, some live community events as well, but we really want people to go to the website, sign up for notices, and we'll email them 90 days in advance. Next one. Just a quick reminder on service levels and affordability. There's a federal program called the Affordable Connectivity Program. This is a $30 a month discount for eligible households. It's not just for All Points, it's for basically any ISP that you've heard of. They have a $30 a month federal program for qualifying households, whether it's based on income or participation in other federal programs, or if you have a child in your house that goes to a school that offers free or reduced lunch, even if they don't participate in that, they can all get this $30 a month discount. There's not been a high enough take rate in Virginia. In most states, this is a known problem. There is a grant program the state's running. It's $10,000 per locality to help make a plan for affordability and equity. We'd be happy to help you all with that. I think it's pretty easy. I think you can just ask for it. I also know that Bay Aging is doing a regional awareness program for this ACP, but you should get the word out. It's fairly easy to sign up. You can go to affordableconnectivity.gov. And we also provide a lot of this information on our website as well. So the 3 starting service levels with the ACP starts at $30 a month. That's for 50 down, 50 up, all the way up to a gig, up and down. And we build our network for a long-term investment. So with a couple of quick upgrades, each location will have access to 10 gigs down, 10 gigs up. That's maybe not going to last forever, but certainly the next 10 or 15 years of serviceability. And we also build in extra capacity there for new neighborhoods, other services outside of the existing footprint. But for right now, it's just 50 by 50, 100 by 100, and gig by gig. And as I mentioned before, DHCD is coming out with a new grant program. It's a 10 grand for a locality for your digital equity and inclusion program. Then I want to show real quickly what the website looks like. Put in an address here, check your address. We'll quickly tell you whether or not you're in the project or not in the project. If you're not in the project, we'll ask you a couple of questions about your existing service. If you say something like, incumbent provider XYZ charged me $7,000, surely I should not be considered served. we will note that, and we will find a way to get that person served with broadband, even if they're not in our project today. But if you are in the project, you'll get a good news sign or a good news response, either yes, we're coming soon, sign up and check the box to receive notifications, or hey, we're in your neighborhood and you can sign up today. And if you're in the neighborhood, sign up today, you pick your install window, and we'll send a crew out to do a site survey. It's mobile friendly, should be easy to use, but it's not 100% perfect. So if any constituents have questions about the website, just send them to me directly. I'll be happy to walk them through it. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions.
Thank you for coming out. Thank you for the brief. Did anyone have any questions? Ms. Binder.
Yes, I do. And it's about time you came here because we've been asking for a while. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. But I do appreciate this very long information because it is helpful. And why I say that, in Shiloh especially, I've had many constituents say, when is All Points coming? They promised us to be first. And I see on this list, we're not even second. We're kind of third or fourth. And that's very disappointing. And I know we've talked about that. Maybe next time, don't promise up front that we'll be first, because that still bothers me a little bit. We should have been first because it was promised to us. And another question I have is, you mentioned the areas that are not served right now because of the grant, correct? That after the grant is over, you might be able to serve them, correct?
Correct.
Because a lot of them are in the cable monopoly areas.
But not our cable monopoly.
No. Our current cable monopoly, and I use that term because due to FCC law, they are allowed to claim areas as census blocks, and they can serve them even though they might charge a very high amount of money to hook up their cable to that area. And unfortunately, because of the grant that you're using, you are not able to serve those areas because it doesn't fall under the grant. But there are a lot of constituents out there. I just happen to be one of them, but I hear from quite a few others that they really need internet, and the cost of entry is quite large from satellite companies, cable companies. So being able to provide to them is very important.
Yes, you're 100% right. The way that the maps are set up discourages challenger ISPs from being able to break into those areas. Strongly encourage people to go to apvfiber.com. If they answer those questions, they have an absurd install fee, then they're considered unserved, and we can get to them in the future.
Do they have to have the actual number that has been given to them by the cable company? Do they actually have to have like documentation? Like how do they?
That helps. There are a couple of ways that they can show that they are unserved. So they can ask for service, and if it takes more than 10 days, they're unserved. If they ask for service and they're charged a fee above the standard install fee, they're unserved. The FCC is coming out with new maps for the Infrastructure Act funding. So they've gotten better, but they all used to be based on a census block. It was based on a census block when we did our grant. So we have a series of questions, and I think if folks just answer them honestly, they don't need a screenshot of a bill unless they have one. But just answer the questions honestly, and we can figure out how to make sure they're served in the future.
Well, I appreciate that because there are quite a few. And one other question, you mentioned Bay Aging. So that's the area agency on aging, correct? In most of the planet where you're installing?
It was just, I mentioned the talking point about the $10,000 per locality on Friday, and the Northern Neck Planning District Commission mentioned that Bay Aging has received some grant funding to bring awareness for the ACP program.
Right.
So they're
So
not affiliated with us.
no. I just wanted to make you aware, as you know, that King George is not part of that. We're part of Planning District 16. So the Rappahannock Area Agency on Aging or Healthy Generations is, maybe you could reach out to them and give them information because they might at least put out to their senior citizens that this opportunity is available. So I would encourage you to reach out to them. And glad you came finally.
Anyone else have any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Shono.
Thanks for coming out. Great. great information here. But I'm really disappointed. We've been working on this project for 3 years now, maybe. And we paid all this money up front to be first. And we are fourth, maybe. So that's a big problem to me. We promised all these folks that we were going to pay this chunk of money to get into the project, and then we're going to pay another big chunk of money to be first. And I've heard, we've heard, hang on, we've heard why, issues with getting cable here and getting permission to use poles and all that kind of stuff. But it just leaves a really bad taste in everybody's mouths. I spoke to somebody in your network, in your organization, about this timeline, and he laughed. And he was like, this is ridiculous. He said King George, in his mind, will not be done 24, maybe later, that you guys are nowhere near this project.
Someone in our organization said it wouldn't be done
Correct.
2024.
And they said even the contractors that come in before you guys won't be done until late 23, 24. And he just kind of chuckled. And I said, well, the information that we have for King George is, we're looking at the end of this summer. And they laughed. And they just said, no way. It's not possible.
Followed up with you about that afterwards. I mean, not that for that specific employee or whoever said that.
Right. Obviously, I can't say who that was, but but this information is coming to me, and then I get this information. So, what's the real information?
That's the real information. But there is a lot of uncertainty in this make-ready process. Some of the crews who work for one firm don't know that more firms are coming in. So I can understand how one guy in a bucket truck may think, surely my crew can't finish this all. But that's why we bring in folks like the Timmons Group. They've added 40 people this year. Bring in more crews from Danella and other construction firms. So I can see how one person may think that surely their firm couldn't do it. But that's why we bring in more crews.
So what have you guys actually done here physically in King George County? Has any cable been run? Do you have a yard, a work area, or anything that's here in the county yet?
A lot of the middle mile has been completed. We've done 16% of the poles make ready, so that's the electric make ready, so that we can attach our fiber, and then in pretty short order, our cable will be attached after. So there's no plan for a construction yard or a warehouse or anything in King George.
So you're going to be driving up from Warsaw or something with y'all's yard art is?
Put some Connex boxes in a yard somewhere, but it's not a permanent facility.
So the physical, actual hands-on work that you guys have done is actually just vetting poles, I guess it was?
Yeah, going up and fixing the poles, reconstructing them if they need to be constructed. That's the physical work right now.
So you're thinking that you're going to have some kind of service here in King George end of August?
Yes, sir.
That's correct?
Yes.
It sounds great. I'm really excited about this. Your prices are great. Everybody is really excited, but it's just going on and on. And trust me, I know things take longer than you expect. But this is just dragging on and on and on. And as my colleagues have said, we've asked for you all to come up and give us briefings, and we get crickets in response to that. So I don't know. I hope there's some truth to this. because I know that our county is really, really in need of this service. And like I said, we've been talking about this for years. So thanks for coming out and giving us this new info.
Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. I just had one question. So, Mr. Dines, could you go back to this slide with the timeline, please? APB go-to-market approach. Yep. Thank you. So where it says release to sales,
Yes,
what's that date?
that's in late August.
So that does match up, because I was thinking it matched up with the August 2023 network lighting event, King George and Westmoreland. Okay, so if that's late August, 3 months back, so May,
Late May.
late May,
Yeah.
June, July, August. Okay, thank you.
So the middle mile, what percentage done are we?
I don't know the exact percent, but I can check with Dominion and get back to you.
And then the make ready polls,
Make ready polls, we are at 16%.
16%.
Yes.
Okay. And then you said shortly after all the make ready polls are in place, you will start connections.
We'll start our fiber. So
Five. Okay. Last mile running.
yes, so we got to do the make ready before we are allowed to attach.
How when you say shortly, how long is shortly after?
And the minute the make ready is done and we get a notice to proceed, we are going to have the crews out there putting the fiber up.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Collins.
Thank you for coming up. So before my time on the board, I followed this, that the county agreed to be involved in this, and they paid this extra money to be first. Can we have our money back?
So the county did offer to pay more if we could start in King George, and we tried to start in King George. We had a lot of permitting issues. We never actually charged King George anything different than any other county. So right now, the way that it works is we get a bill and we send it in and it's approved. King George pays 1.1% of it. That's the way that this grant program has worked. It's a kind of a cost reimbursement up to a certain cap. And then in the phase 2 project, we recognize that you want more information. You want to, hold us accountable. So the way that the second stage works is we don't get any reimbursement until we actually do something in the county, the specific miles and the specific homes in King George. So the first half is it's a cost reimbursement program. And then phase 2 is we report specific service to homes and specific miles that are built, and then we get reimbursed for those. So the two different grant cycles are financed differently, but we build them all and construct them all at the same time.
So did King George give this money to be first? Yes or no?
No. The King George, no.
Okay, thank you.
We bill based on a cost reimbursement. All the counties have been billed the same percent.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Ms. Binder.
Yeah, so this is what I forgot to bring up. It's on the first slide. It says project status. So I hope in the future, it says here, frequent communication between the parties there. I think you need to add us in there, frequent communication, because it has been lacking.
Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions? Thank you for coming out and briefing us.
Thank you.
All right, move on to action items. We have Department of Economic Development and Tourism tech application. Mr. Viner.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Excuse me. This year, Jazz in the Country celebrates its 4th annual benefit at Mount Bethel Retreat. Jazz in the Country's goal is to continue to enlighten the public of historical sites, recreational opportunities, and other points of interest in King George County. Jazz in the Country is requesting $35,000 for social media marketing, radio ads, newspaper ads, and promotions for music/festival websites. This year's request includes, and this is actually incorrect on your summary here, it's a $6,000 request that will be used to cover a portion of talent for the festival. Marketing efforts will reach throughout the Mid-Atlantic region. Visit King George will be part of their marketing platform. Tax recommendation, after review, the TAC recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve funding in the amount of $25,000 for Jazz in the Country to support marketing efforts. And staff agrees with tax recommendations. And I believe Jazz in the Country and their team is here this evening, so if you have any specific questions for their event or festival this year, feel free to.
Does anyone have any questions?
I do, not for Jazz in the Country, but for Mr. Minor.
Go ahead.
How much, do we have this in the tourism fund if we did the recommended amount?
Yes, ma'am. So currently the tourism fund, as it exists now, is $546,000 as a total. However, for what's budgeted this year, the approval of this application, we'd be a little $10,000 over what was budgeted for this year's TAC application grants.
And thank you. And I know this is a very popular event. It's very well received, but the one part of this that I have heartburn on is the money paying for the talent. That's my one. So I would suggest taking, and what was the fee for the talent?
So the fee for the talent was $6,000, but the TAC did take note, and they only approved $25,000 for the marketing efforts in itself.
So I would say take the talent part out, but the marketing efforts, yes.
Okay. Do you want to, ma'am? Are you saying to take that out of the $35,000 request, or to
Yeah,
keep
what
the
does,
20, or to keep the $25,000 only for marketing efforts?
because that doesn't come, yeah, that does. Yes, wait a minute, let me do my, come back.
No, understood.
Mr. Chair, can I make a suggestion that would probably accommodate what Ms. Bender is requesting? So we could, in crafting a motion, we could move to approve $25,000 not to be for anything in their list not to be used for talent, for the purpose of talent, is what we could do. So that would allow them to use it how they say they're going to use it, as long as they don't have the talent. And it is $10,000 difference, and the talent is only $6,000. They're just going to have to find somewhere else where they don't use our money, is what I was thinking.
Does the TAC ever entertain? So this is going on for a number of years, which is great. It's always good to see an event that gains traction and is able to move forward and have a yearly impact. And just the idea of trying to spread out tourism dollars, which starting off a new event like this, I'm sure is probably the most difficult thing. And so now you have some ahead of steam to some degree. Is there any perception from the TAC to try to maybe wean off from that for some activities as they continue to move forward, or is their perspective that it would continue to carry on year after year after year?
So, Mr. Chair, we haven't had a discussion about that yet.
Okay.
You know, the grant money is grant money at the end of the day.
It is.
People can make applications.
Agreed.
However they like. So, but we haven't had that discussion yet. That's something that, if the board would like, we could have that discussion at our next TAC meeting.
And the only reason I ask is I know that we've been drawing down on that. I think historically, before maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I don't think the TAC fund was really used much at all. And so there's a large balance that's built up from the transient occupancy tax that it has to be used for these kinds of events, which is great that we have it available, but we've continued to draw it down year over year. And so my concern is that we continue to kind of go down that route. And you said this would put us 10,000 over the budgeted amount. So
the budget amount for grant applications, not the tourism budget.
No, I understand. So just being cognizant of and you said it was 550,000 left in the.
Right, that's a tourism fund. We're budgeted 117,000
Okay.
every year. 64,000 to 70,000 goes into TAC applications.
Okay. That's all I had. Did anyone else have any comments or questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did have one more question. One of the items listed under advertising, marketing, strategies, efforts. The Virginia Black Business Expo, August 5th to 7th, 2022, a $700 registration fee. And I know, Mr. Minor, you have attended, I think you attended that in the past maybe, or we just,
Not this year,
not-
I will.
because you just brought us a request
That's correct.
at the last meeting, right, for some TAC funding for that. The only heartburn I have over that is, why should we give someone money to go set up a table somewhere else to advertise for their event? So I kind of feel like if you're going to be there, could you not have some of their materials there for them? $700 is a lot of money for something like that. So I kind of had some heartburn about that item being funded with the TAC fund as well. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Leave it to my colleagues if they would like to make a motion.
Mr. Chair, make a motion, please, to approve $25,000 for the 4th Annual Benefit Jazz Festival at Mount Bethel Retreat Center, King George, on August 26, 2023.
Can I make a friendly amendment? To not be used for the talent. Is that, Ms. Slack, is that okay to phrase it that way? Do I need a little bit more wordsmith in there?
I think that's fine if that is acceptable to Mr. Collins.
With that friendly amendment, I'll second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just one discussion matter. So as you say, they're drawing down on the TAC fund. So a lot of these organizations and groups that are working on these things do need to wean some of the off a little bit and try to be self-funding for these things. That's reason we do them is to bring in tourists and to bring people into the county. But we can't. So a lot of folks have a lot of interest to bring things in. I hope that the organizations can help support themselves. Thank you.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
Thank you, sir.
Next up, we have Department of Finance. Ms. Hahn.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. My first item is a request to transfer funds from the CIP budget to the debt service fund budget. During the budget generation cycle for fiscal year 22-23, we were looking at the financing to complete the courthouse and to do the public safety radio system. And so we built that funding into our budget. However, at the time, we didn't know what our payments were going to be. And so just a little bit of history, when we build our budget, we have the CIP money, and then we show how much we're going to transfer to the debt service budget. And at that time, we didn't know, so it was just put into the CIP budget. And our first year payments for interest for both of those projects totaled $415,428.76. And so I'm requesting that you authorize the county administrator to transfer $415,428.76 from the CIP budget to the debt service budget for those payments.
Any questions?
I'll put a motion in to authorize the county administrator to transfer $415,428.76 from CIP budget to debt service fund budget as presented.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries.
The next item is to amend the budget for the courthouse completion. In November, on November 15th at the Board of Supervisors meeting, the board established and appropriated the budget for the courthouse completion. The budget was just for the $12 million, where our loan was for $12,150,000, for the $150,000 being for cost of issuance. And in conversations with our auditor, we need to establish a budget line for that $150,000 in order to make those payments for issuance. So I ask that you authorize the county administrator to amend and appropriate the budget for the courthouse completion as presented.
Any questions for Ms. Hahn?
Yes.
Go ahead, Mr. Stonehill.
Cost of issuance.
So this is what we pay our bond counselor, what we pay our financial advisor to get those. They went out to the bond or to the market to get the financing for us.
So it's their payment of service to
That's
do that
correct,
job.
yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Was that in the original budget?
It was, so the budget was set up just for the project but the loan was for the $12,150,000 to include the cost of issuance. And it was just left off of the budget that was set up in November.
So it wasn't part of the project?
It was part of the financing. It's the $150,000 is for the financing. And that's what we went out to the bond market for, the $12,150,000, and that's what the loan is for. The project itself is $12 million. $150,000 is the cost of issuance.
So in order to get the loan, it cost us $96,957? Or is that for the public radio system?
That's for the public radio system. It was $150,000 for the.
I don't recall ever being told that both of these there was going to be a cost of issuance for these things. I don't ever recall that.
Isn't this just cleaning up paperwork? Because our auditor has said that we need to do things a little differently. I know the accounting rules have changed a little bit. So is that about right?
Yes, and I know at one of the other earlier meetings back in October, the board authorized the county administrator to sign the loan documents, and this was included in those loan documents. That should have been in your board packet.
Yes, I read those loan documents, and I didn't see that in there. That's what I'm telling you.
I would defer to the county administrator and the county attorney, maybe, back in October. It would have been in there, in the documents that you were put in to authorize to be signed.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that it was all in there. I would have to go back and refresh.
So I would have questioned it at the time because I didn't see it. I didn't see it in there. I can't believe that two of them I would miss two of them.
Because they were done together. Both of them were one behind the other, I believe, if my memory serves me correctly. In that, I don't remember which meeting in October it was, but all of the information about the contracts and the closing documents were in a board meeting, in a board packet in October.
So there's no timestamp on this particular motion, is there? So can we just make sure it's in there?
So they withheld the $150,000 from when the loan came in for the $12,150,000.
So you already did it?
That's correct. By the contract that was signed, by the closing documents that were signed.
We'll be happy to provide that information.
Mr. Milliken,
We have a motion for something that's already paid out.
It's paid out, and this motion is to get the budget set in the financial system.
this I think is just paperwork and new auditing standards. But what I was going to suggest is a compromise, because this sounds like it's time sensitive. Would we be able to move this to the end so we could look it up real quickly in the packet? I'm willing to try to find it real quickly, and we could bring it to the end of the meeting so we get a minute to.
So it's not time sensitive, so can we table it till the next meeting?
I think she said it was time sensitive.
They already paid the bill.
We've already paid the bill. The other budget was set in November. We're here in March because of the late timing on the audit. And I believe the treasurer mentioned how we've been going month by month and closing. When Ms. Cobb was closing November, that's when it came to her attention, but this was just 2 weeks ago when she got to November. And so really it needs to be done as soon as possible to get the financials correct.
Mr. Chair, if I can make a motion, I would authorize the county administrator to amend and appropriate the budget for the courthouse completion as presented.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Do we have any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Right.
May I read something aloud? It's a definition of costs of issuance.
Sure.
It might be helpful. Costs of issuance means all items of expense directly or indirectly payable or reimbursable and related to the authorization, sale, and issuance of bonds, including but not limited to printing costs, costs of preparation and reproduction of documents, filing and recording fees, initial fees and charges of any fiduciary, legal fees and charges, fees and disbursements of consultants and professionals, costs of credit ratings, fees and charges for preparation, execution, transportation, and safekeeping of bonds, costs and expenses of refunding, premiums for the insurance of the payment of the bonds, and any other cost, charge, or fee in connection with the original issuance of bonds. So
Is there a line item?
it seems to me that that wouldn't have been there because at the time they hadn't issued the bonds yet, so they would not have surmised what the cost of issuance would be because the bonds weren't issued yet.
They built in 150,000 for each of the different financing. If you notice on the next item, because the cost of issuance wasn't 150,000, they suggested that the remaining balance of $53,042.72 be added to the contingency line on the public radio safety, public safety radio system.
Mr. Chair, can you call the question?
Just a second, I can. Okay. I'm going to call the question. There has to be a second, then there's a vote on it.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I pulled up the resolutions for the two issuances because this will be an issue as well with the next item, if it is an issue. So both of the items, they had the identical cost of the $12,150,000, and both of the resolutions authorize expenditures for the cost of issuance. The resolution doesn't state specifically what the cost of issuance is. That came through all the contracts and all the additional documents that Mr. Miller was authorized to sign, but the $150,000 was within that money that was loaned, and the purposes of the money that was loaned did include the quote unquote cost of issuance. I'd be happy to recirculate those resolutions.
Any other discussion? All right, we have a motion properly seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion carries.
And so the next item is similar with the budget was set in November 15th, but was only for the actual construction and engineering costs for the public radio safety system. We had built the 150,000 into the bond documents, and the cost of issuance for this was $96,957.28, leaving $53,042.72 to be added to the line of contingency. And so I'm asking that you authorize the county administrator to amend and appropriate the budget for the public radio safety system as presented.
Any questions for Ms. Hahn? Okay.
I move to authorize the county administrator to amend and appropriate the budget for the public radio system as presented.
Second.
Motion properly seconded. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chair,
Good.
just a question. So I note that when we add the cost of issuance plus the contingency, it does equal $150,000. So that $150,000 is square.
Yes,
It
ma'am.
was already, okay. Thank you very much.
Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Hahn.
you.
Chief.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening to you. This item is for an authorization to enter into agreements to purchase a replacement ambulance. To give you a little bit of background, as you may recall, back in September of 2022, when you had a capital budget work session, was in fact at the sheriff's office that evening, we proposed our capital projects and our capital needs as departments. One of those items was to purchase this replacement ambulance. And at that time, that evening, I stated that we did not have a price from the vendor, that we were putting a placeholder of $300,000 in there, but the disclaimer is that we did not know what the price was going to be because the vendor could not provide us a price. We recently got the price of our replacement ambulance. The price came in at $333,957. And so just to give you a little bit of context, this is the same specification and same model that we purchased back in 2020 for about $285,000. So we went from $285, we raised it up to $300, and now the price today for an ambulance is $333,957. I want to make a couple points real quick. This is the same specification as our current ambulance. There's no change in the specification. It's a Horton Model 603F ambulance. Point number two, we don't control the price. We don't know the price until we receive the price. So it's very hard. This is a very volatile market. I think that goes without saying with any good or service, that it's very hard to project where prices are going to be, especially with the inflation and also the supply and demand economy that we're living in today. The third point that I want to make is that even though this is a $334,000 ambulance, this does not include the $20,000 power load system. We're taking that out of our existing unit and putting it into the new unit. It does not include the $30,000 stretcher. The stretcher, Stryker power load stretcher is $30,000. It does not include that at that price. It doesn't include the $40,000 heart monitor. It doesn't include the $5,000 communication radio. And it doesn't include the $6,000 stair chair. And it certainly doesn't include any trauma dressings, Band-Aids, and what we have to do to support the mission. We have 7 ambulances in our fleet. My goal is to come to you as a board and to have these on a rotation schedule where I don't have to come to you and say, King George County Board of Supervisors, I need 4 ambulances in 1 year. So we'd like to try to space those out. Happy to entertain any questions, but the recommended action would be to authorize the county administrator to take the following actions. Now, these actions would be to appropriate an additional $33,957 from the capital fund and to execute a goods and services agreement with Fesco Emergency Sales for the purchase of a Horton Model 603F ambulance mounted on a 2023 Dodge Ram 5500 4x4 chassis, and the total amount of $333,957, subject to approval as to form by the county attorney.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Is there any discussion?
I don't have any discussion. I just had a couple of questions before we Ms. Kupka jumped in on that one.
All right, why don't you ask your questions? And I believe Mr. Gonzalez
Chief,
wants them too.
Anybody else, who else builds ambulances? Because just, I don't know, outside of Horton.
So there are several different manufacturers. One of the things that Horton is a part of is that they've had a large group go in called RevCorp. That has bought up about 6 or 7 manufacturers of ambulances. So you're not seeing a lot of the independent ambulance manufacturers. They're starting to be bought up by larger companies. I don't know if that's, if that's making things better, or if that's making things worse. There are several, a variety of different manufacturers. I will say this. If there was the same product for a lower price, I'm all in on that. And we search all the time. I will also say that we have a team within our department called an apparatus committee. And that apparatus committee is routinely looking at what vendors are providing what products and obviously at what cost. So we like to keep some of our specifications somewhat the same, but this is where the price is pretty much industry-wide. I don't know if I hope I answered your question. I could go through a list of different manufacturers, but
No, I was just curious. I mean, there's such a specific item and there's such a unique thing that, I was just wondering, is it, you're so limited in what you can choose from out there. I mean, and then, so you're looking at this thing rolling down the road. It's $1 million unit when you're done.
it's pretty close. These ambulances, and I'll just reference my department report that I provided to you at this meeting. You can see our 3-year trend. When you look at where we're at for February calls on a 3-year basis, we're running more and more calls year after year, pretty much month after month. These ambulances are pretty much outfitted at a advanced life support level. They're outfitted with paramedics, advanced EMTs. They're pretty much mobile emergency rooms in order to provide life-saving measures, and it's the equipment's very costly. And one of the points I'll add about cost. This is part of the reason why we made this decision back in 2007 to do ambulance fee for service, to help offset some of this capital expenses as we saw the cost increasing. We closed in 2022, I think right at $926,000 for ambulance fees. And we did that, we started that, many years ago because we saw the price of ambulances going up year after year, the cost of equipment going up year after year, having to pay people to be on duty and respond to calls and hold certification. We're trying to get in front of it. I hope the price stabilizes, but I'm not an economist.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Matt. Thank you, Mr. Collins. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question, Chief. The first line item, no charge, standard warranty terms. How long is the warranty?
So there's 2 separate warranties. There's a warranty on the Ram chassis. Then there's the warranty that's on the actual the box itself. I want to say I think it's the 3-year, 36,000 mile standard. That the bumper to bumper, if you will. Then you have the powertrain warranty, and I think that goes up to 60. So whatever the standard Ram warranty is for the truck part, you get that, and then you get a 1-year, pretty much like bumper to bumper on the ambulance configuration part, on the box, the wiring, the upholstery, the flooring. Then there's certain things that have different warranties, throughout the unit. Like the HVAC system has some different warranties. The the med vault system where we keep the narcotics set that has a different warranty. Whether we install it, like the communication radio, that could be different. So a variety of different warranties on that vehicle is the answer.
Thank you.
So Chief, we had a discussion yesterday in regards to this. And, you know, all the county departments are coming forth with these needs and so forth. And they all put numbers in to this budget that are never accurate. So that's a big deal for me, to have accurate numbers to make good decisions. And every time we come, we have, another $33,000. And personally, I would say no to that $33,000, but for $33,957, how much is a life worth? So I can't jeopardize a life over $33,000. So I'm kind of in a hard spot. So I will vote yes, but my budgeting skills say no. I hope that in the future that we can be more accurate in these estimates so we can have a real budget. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, we did have a motion, properly seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Chair votes aye, motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, we have a discussion item. So we're bringing this back to property tax reassessment. I'd ask to add this. I believe that everyone did receive correspondence from Ms. Lackey as well with the King William documentation. Is that correct? Did everyone get that? Okay. In order, they were looking at a couple different opportunities to either maybe look at a committee or a board of assessors. I don't know how much everyone had an opportunity to really look through it, but I just kind of wanted to bring it back because I know we kind of given direction to staff to bring something back to us, but I don't feel like we gave enough direction for them to have a good idea of what we want to see. So that's what the discussion is looking to do. Do we want to look to do something similar to how King William did, some kind of committee that would be citizens who would be appointed to serve in that role? Do we want a board of assessors? Do we want to bring it back to the county to handle? What do we want to see staff bring back to the board as an option? Does anyone, go ahead.
I'll go first. So if you form a committee of citizens, it's not that it's a bad idea, but there might be limited experience in regards to that. Like the Board of Equalization has to go through a training in order to do that. I don't know if that would be a viable solution for this. But when it comes to assessment of tax, you need to have people that are skilled in those disciplines in order to do that. That's my first suggestion.
That's fair. So as well as my understanding, looking at the way they had kind of crafted theirs, that wasn't necessarily that they were going to be looking at individual items. They were going to be looking more at samples from the assessor in order to make determinations on, because at the end of the day, they provide documentation and information that's then used for any new homes that are built as well, and being able to justify why something would be valued, with this many square footage and these kind of amenities, and to vet that data to make sure that they say, yeah, this data makes sense, in the way that you're presenting it, and how you are doing it is fair and equitable across all homeowners in the region or property owners. So would that be a fair assessment of how it was kind of crafted?
Right. It looked like one of their main charges was to assist the contracted assessor in the drafting of notices that went to the public so that they'd be user friendly. And then, as Mr. Granger was explaining, they also were tasked with kind of sampling, just kind of picking out at random a property and looking at it and just what's the gut check? Does this assessor's information make sense? Are they presenting this in a way that the public is going to have confidence in?
So, Mr. Chair? Sure. So in the last assessment there's so many, and so if you take a sample of properties, I, mathematically, I'm not sure if that is a good solution. What I've found in the last assessment is I sat in on the Board of Equalization meetings, and there were so many different categories and so many different nuances that if you just take a sampling, you wouldn't catch those. Everywhere from the, the, the property sheet being incorrect to um, being value to certain subdivisions. Certain subdivisions had more value than another. So I don't know if it would, taking a sampling would give you a broad enough picture of what's real.
So you would suggest that they should look at every single one?
So
have the assessor look at it and then have someone vet and look at every single, is that your suggestion?
That wasn't my suggestion
Okay.
whatsoever.
Okay.
I don't think that a sampling is accurate.
So what's a good alternative to sampling then?
Well, first off, a good would be have the assessor get it right the first time. That would be the right thing.
But I think the point of the committee is to then be able to vet that data that's being provided by the assessor. So this is just saying, instead of just taking whatever they give, having someone look at it and provide feedback on, yes, this makes sense. And if it doesn't, then we would have the opportunity to get involved and
So currently what happens is that the assessor assesses, and then you go to the assessor if you disagree with it. If you disagree with the assessor, you go to the Board of Equalization.
Mhm.
And if you don't like what the Board of Equalization says, then you go to circuit court. So I don't know how a committee would be helpful in that process.
my understanding is it'd be before that first step of everything going out to the citizens to verify that the work was done right. Is that a correct assessment? I mean, this is their engagement would be to help vet the data that's presented that would then be sent out to citizens. And if there were real concerns and saying there's incorrect, like this doesn't make sense because you have this home value like this and this home value like this, and that doesn't make sense because for whatever reason, this has A, this has B, and the disparity is too much or too little, or whatever it could be. Would they be involved in looking at it from that perspective and giving feedback, and then the board could take action if the assessor is not executing the contract properly?
So however the committee is tasked, the solicitation for the contracted assessor can be written such that, they have to, at certain stages, they have to get feedback from the committee. So if the committee does a sampling of several different property types, but they're finding inconsistencies, maybe they sample some more until they're happy and they're satisfied that there's not a continuous type of error, or that certain types of property they feel are not being assessed in the best manner. So they can't dictate to the assessor, but they can possibly help catch some of these issues before it gets to the taxpayer. So before they get the tax bill, there's at least been some sampling of some of the data to see on a screening basis, does this appear to be correct and consistent and reasonable?
So let's say, for the sake of argument, that they were to look at it and say, this does not seem to be correct and reasonable, and the assessor says, nope, that is. What would be an avenue forth to find resolution in a situation like that?
Ultimately, the assessor's professional judgment is going to, have to have some some clout. We can't have a committee of people who don't have who are not licensed appraisers telling a licensed appraiser what to do precisely. But if they give them feedback and they say this doesn't make sense, and they don't give a reasoned explanation, then that's a good sign that your assessor is not going to hold up if they're challenged in court. So it kind of gives you a little trial run of, does this make sense? And you may have an assessor and a committee who disagree, but you will at least flush out any obvious errors, or if uh, there will be still the role of the Board of Equalization to show that similarly situated properties are being treated the same, but you get a random sampling and you can kind of flush out some of those issues at an earlier stage.
Okay.
So if you took 10 commercial properties, you took 10 residential, you took 10 of that, so that's why I'm concerned about the sampling. Because each person up here that owns property that's residential is different than the one sitting next to them. There's different nuances. I'm just cautioning you all because of my 8 years on the Board of Equalization. There's no property the same in King George, so it's hard to take a sample. You can't say that, all subdivisions, all residential, there's a zero bottom to it. There's just so many different things. What a committee could do would be more transparency in the sending out of the information, if that's what you are interested in. I think that would be a valuable asset. Because what I have found through my experience is that people, when their bills come out, they're so far behind the 8 ball that it gets to be too late. And most average folks don't even understand the process of talking to the assessor, going to the Board of Equalization. And the ones that do take the step to go to the Board of Equalization, they don't know either. They don't even know what they're supposed to bring. They show up and they tell you in an emotional plea why their property should be less value. When the fact of the matter is that there's certain documents that would show that their value should be less than what it is. So they're untrained people. So the committee should help the untrained people get to the spot where everybody is fair and just in their value of their properties, whether it be commercial, residential, cultural. That's kind of my point.
I think Ms. Kupka had something then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I took a look at the application that King William County did to request citizen stakeholders to serve on their reassessment advisory committee. And it states the scope, and this is just a suggestion of what we could do, but it says committee members shall use data analytics and random sampling of the work product from an appraisal service to ensure the accuracy of the project over time, and regularly report on the progress of the reassessment via a project dashboard showing key metrics and progress towards the end goal to help keep stakeholders and King William County citizens informed and engaged. And to me, that was one of the biggest issues I saw, which was it didn't seem like there was any oversight over time. We just all got our reassessment all of a sudden and then found out, oh, well, maybe this didn't go the way it should have. But it seems to me having a committee such as this would provide some oversight over time, and they would, whether that's a project dashboard or they come to the Board of Supervisors once a month and they provide a report to us. It seems to me like this could be helpful in having some sort of oversight and ongoing communication, and provide transparency to the public. Thank you.
Would you suggest?
I think Ms. Spinner had next. We'll come back to
One of the two suggestions I had for the committee, maybe we could make it like there's a realtor on it. There's, there's certain people we're looking for that might have some knowledge. Another thing that might be helpful, and I know I had a lot of constituent ask me, is maybe we could send out a notice before we start the reassessment process to come and look at their field sheets to make sure the information is accurate on those field sheets. Or even, as Ms. Kupka said at last year at one of our meetings, maybe send out a field sheets in our tax bill so that people can look at it to make sure, saying, hey, we're looking at reassessing soon. Please check your field sheet to make sure that everything is accurate on it. Just a suggestion.
Mr. Collins.
So would you suggest on this committee that the Commissioner of Revenue would be on it?
So
If I may, the minutes from the King William County deliberations, their county attorney recommended that no elected officials serve in the advisory committee just because of any potential conflicts with, possible future litigation and things of that nature. So that was the recommendation from their county attorney, which makes, resonates with me as well.
So you could have different categories of folks, just not the Board of Supervisors.
No, it's
Yeah.
saying any elected official, but so that would take the commissioner totally out of that, but so they'd be going to the commissioner who would be totally out of that. There has to be some type of liaison so there's not all this misinformation and misunderstanding.
Mr. Chair, may I read from the same document? It says the advisory, and this is just how King William did it. The advisory committee shall consist of 5 citizens of the county of proven ability, 1 from each of the county's 5 election districts, appointed by the Board of Supervisors. Then on the bottom, it says necessary committee member skills and knowledge, real estate assessment, project management, operational procedures, business systems integration, data analytics, financial, contractual, and vendor management, communication change, and stakeholder management. So those were the suggestions. And then above it also has check boxes with those. And it says, please indicate areas of skill and knowledge. And then you would just check a box if you meet one of those. So.
Mr. Chair? Yes, sir. So I understand what you're saying, but it does. So when you do that, you want to be community, you want to have a mirror of the community. So those people have actually more of an interest in the assessment than not. So I was a state trooper and I was on the Board of Equalization. You'll see what the Board of Equalization says. They want 2 realtors, 1 finance person, and then 1 other. And I was the other. So you have to leave room for to be able to kind of get the entire community mirrored on a committee, not exclude, especially people that have, or you don't want to include too many people that have a business interest in real estate.
So when this committee meets, obviously the Planning Commission, Community Development is not on the Planning Commission, but they are at the meetings and helping to facilitate those meetings. Would there be someone, is there someone that would be involved from the county staff that would be attending the meetings and just kind of in that role?
So the board could certainly designate someone. The stakeholders, King William had the Citizen Advisory Board, and then they list as stakeholders the Board of Supervisors, County Administration, Commissioner of Revenue, Treasurer, and Information Technology Department. Now, you probably don't need all those folks to all send a representative to every meeting, but to kind of have a point of contact for, questions, and you probably do need at least 1 staff liaison, but then you probably can, kind of pull together folks that can be consulted, maybe similar to the redistricting process where you have people with certain subject matter expertise.
Understood. Okay.
So on the Board of Equalization, the commissioner is at every meeting and provides the information or all the stuff necessary for the folks that come there and schedule the meetings. So that is an elected official at those meetings facilitating them. So you would need someone that has that skill. I don't know why you can have it on the Board of Equalization. You can have a elected official, but you couldn't have one on a committee like that.
So are you saying that the Commissioner of the Revenue is on the Board of Equalization, or they are so I think that the concern is having an elected official as a member of the committee.
Okay, so if you take that out, you still have to have somebody that facilitates it.
Agreed, but that's
Just like Ms. Hall,
Mhm.
she provides all the information. When there's a zoning appeal, she provides all the information, all the stuff for the board to then review. So she's a scheduler, she's a gatherer of information, and then she answers questions at those meetings as they come up.
agreed. I'll be honest, I felt like that was the question I was asking. Did that come across? I'm sorry. And that's why I was asking if there would be a staff member who'd help to facilitate, whether could be someone, actually the Commissioner of the Revenue, or some other individual that's identified to fill that role.
That's why I kept pushing the Commissioner of Revenue. You can't take them out of the mix of it because they have a very important role in it. So maybe they would be the facilitator.
I'll just verify. Would the Commissioner of the Revenue be allowed to serve in a role such as that, even though they're an elected official, or would there be concern from a legal perspective?
Right, so we, or the board cannot direct a constitutional officer, but certainly if the direction is that the Commissioner of Revenue will still be the person who is retaining the consultant, I mean, be it whatever, who is on the selection panel, but if they're the person that is the point of person that the assessor is reporting to, I think it would make sense that they have at least someone from their staff be a facilitator or a resource to the advisory committee, but perhaps not be an appointed member of the advisory committee, but be, as you're saying, a facilitator and available resource.
I was even going to recommend maybe the second in command, if the Commissioner of Revenue, because that would not be the elected party, be the point of contact for questions.
Would the committee be a board? So if it's a board like Landfill Board and Board of Equalization, they have a chairman and vice chairman minutes. And then Equalization has the Commissioner of Revenue as their, facilitator. And Board of Zoning Appeals has Ms. Hall as their facilitator. Could it not be set that way?
Yes, I think it can.
Okay,
I believe it can, yes. That's what I've heard.
but you can't, you're saying that you can't direct the commissioner to be the facilitator. Is that what you're saying?
She's a constitutional officer, so yeah, we don't have the authority over her to do that.
So I guess you'd have to ask her if that was the will of the board.
Agreed.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
for the sake of, furthering this discussion at maybe a later date, would it be beneficial for Ms. Lackey and myself to come up with like a proposed structure that obviously is just a proposal, but it would take into consideration the comments that have been made here, and then y'all can direct us further? Is that something that you would?
So is everyone interested in at least pursuing the idea of some kind of committee and then having some kind of staff, whether it's the Commissioner of Revenue or some other staff appointee that would serve in that role of facilitator, and having something brought back to the board to consider? I see Ms. Bender saying yes. Mr. Collins, how you feel?
Bring back something wouldn't be on an action item, it'd still be on a discussion item.
Okay.
Yes. It'd be
But more concrete as a suggestion for us,
It's very,
based off our feedback we're given.
very concrete. Yes, sir.
Okay. Ms. Kupka?
Yes, and it looks like if we do a board, the state code requires it to be a board of assessors.
Yes.
So, yeah.
That's my understanding. Mr. Stonehill's a yes? Okay, then yes. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Okay. We'll move on to the county administrator's report.
All right, so in answer to Ms. Bender's question earlier about the middle school and the existing courthouse study, the Mosley Architects is working with us, holding meetings. I know that Ms. Hahn and Ms. Lackey participated in a meeting. The plan is to still it's in place is end of April, early May. We would be bringing something to the board and then having an idea of what the kind of how to scope all that and what your proposed cost would be to do some things. To-do list updates, just you have that. I guess there's a couple of things. One is there's a couple projects that have been moved, obviously, to the back half. I will point out that we'll have this most recent discussion, the reassessment, property tax reassessment will be added as a non-capital item, and we'll provide you updates on that, obviously. I will gladly say that, we indicated at the last meeting that we have a PIO, we call it a community engagement coordinator, communications and community engagements coordinator. And her name is Miss Amy Southall, and she will be starting on April 17th. So we're very excited about that. So that project or that line has been moved to the back and as a completion. The Fairview Beach outfall, which is a service authority project, but is meant to be on there for you all in terms of all the capital projects, and especially the projects that our county engineering is working with the service authority on. Those are on those to-do list updates. The Fairview Beach outfall is complete. And if for those who may not recall what this is, it is from the Fairview Beach wastewater facility, there is an outfall that goes into the Potomac River that provides the treated effluent. And during Thanksgiving of 21 period of time, it blew out, if you will, because of a storm. And we had a temporary measure for probably about 9 months, and now we had a contractor and got that complete just this week. The reason that there was a kind of a lengthy delay is because we had to go through Virginia Marine Resources, State of Maryland, DEQ, a number of other resources, state agencies that had to sign off on it, and we had a contractor complete that, and so that project is completed. Again, our intention for the to-do list update will be the first meeting of the month will be for non-capital related items. The second meeting of the month would be for capital related items, so that you would get, you just wouldn't get the entire document. Capital items obviously change, as projects, as they move forward. And so we thought we would kind of divide it up. Certainly always available to answer any questions on any projects. The budget schedule, so the 23rd and the 30th are here. We're going to be here in the boardroom. So that'll be at 6 p.m. beginning this Thursday for the 23rd. And then again, as you recall, the 30th, we're going to have the school board doing a joint meeting with you all. I did get confirmation from Dr. Boyd that all the members of the school board will be present, so I think it will be a good meeting. April 6th and 20th would also be in the boardroom here if needed. I mean, we're just giving you this as future dates. The April 13th and the 27th, however, if we have meetings on those dates, we would need to consider doing company one or an alternative location. I know it was a little tight in there, so we could always, I guess, reach out to the sheriff if that's something that you all wanted to do. I know that was another facility that he's made available. Okay, so the results of the poll, the battery storage, the noise, and the power station, there is there's a little graph, battery storage location. This is the poll that you all gave us. 3 votes for Virginia Beach, 3 votes for Hanover, and 3 votes for, Prince George County, excuse me, and then Sussex had 2 votes. So they need 3. So, you know, by acclamation, if you will, Sussex is not necessary unless you have a burning desire to have Sussex on there, and then you'd have to make a decision about the top 3. So I just need to report back to Ms. Hall. Are you good if I go with the top 3?
Is everyone good with that? Okay, yes, sir.
Okay. The next one is
Mr. Collins?
noise ordinance. So there was Warrenton, we already had them, and then they asked for 1 additional. It looks like the poll results are Prince William County, with 3 votes. And so I would suggest that that I notify them to have Prince William County in there.
If
Okay.
I may, Mr. Chair, just for everyone's knowledge. So Prince William County has had quite a lot of public outcry, as I think you all are aware, about noise. And so they made 1 tweak to their existing noise ordinance last month. And then they've convened a group of stakeholders, but they do not have a noise ordinance that's been substantially revised recently. Caroline County has a noise ordinance that is in their regular section of code. It's not in their zoning provision, but it was fairly recently amended. So I just wanted to raise that for everyone's attention. Doesn't necessarily need to change the outcome. I just wanted to have that for your awareness.
Thank you, Ms. Lackey.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So the next item was the power plants. And it looks like you got 2 localities, Fauquier County and Louisa County were the top ones. Iron County, Utah. I think that has to do with like either geothermal power plants or hydrogen, and so that was why they had put that in there.
Mr. Chair, the one concern I have of this one, and I did look up Iron County, that is geothermal, is Louisa has nuclear. Fauquier is different. Hydrogen is one of the new uses that it seems to be popular, and we need to. I don't know what other locality, because I know it hasn't been done on a large scale except for in Europe, and there are in the works in a couple other states in the United States. So there's no real. So my concern is we're doing power plants, but we're not including all the possibilities.
Right.
So when I saw Utah on there, I was worried about the Berkeley group throwing us another bill to travel to Utah to check out that situation. So that one went off the map for me completely.
I don't know that was in their plan, but I think they were indicated that I think Ms. Bender kind of categorizes it. There really is a sparse amount of information on these other than regular power plants, either coal-fired or nuclear. And so that's where I think that, is the coming technology is this hydrogen production. And I think as Ms. Bender said, and Mr. Granger knows, in talking with the Green Energy Ventures, that it's almost like you got to go to Europe to get something that would be the model for what's going on. So, but I can tell them absolutely you can't leave the state of Virginia, and we'll keep them tied to Virginia. They can't go to Utah.
My just concern is particular with hydrogen. That's such a new thing. I want to make sure that we have enough information.
Okay, I'll talk with Ms. Hall. I think that is it. And just employee anniversaries in March. Our treasurer is 24 years. I always miss half of the other folks. Harold Myers with the Fire and Rescue, 17 years. Ryan Moneyhan, 17 years with the Sheriff Department. And then we obviously have a number of folks that are more shorter term, but are contributing nonetheless. And you can see some of those folks up there. That's it, unless there's any other questions. Oh, employee new hires. There's our new hires. Any questions?
Yes, sir. So item number 16, Board of Supervisors goal setting session, says ongoing. Recommend that the board examines dates to hold a goal setting session in March and April. So can we get a little more pinned down and on that so we can do that in the beginning of this year?
I'm at your
Incomes.
disposal.
So we have, summer vacations coming, so I think that's an important thing that we agreed on, that we wanted to set some goals.
Sure. Obviously, that's the stakeholders, the board, or designated to the board. So that's us, obviously.
Us.
So, yeah. So
can we get a little more concrete, like where it would be, how long it would be, what date it will be?
I can certainly outline a proposal, but it ultimately would become, it's incumbent on you all to give me that direction. But I'm happy to give you an outline of what I would, where you could do it at, what the time frame, the commitment, that kind of stuff. Yes, sir.
Could we get that before the next meeting?
have the meeting before the next meeting? Is that what you're asking?
No, have that information before the next meeting. Yeah.
Sure. We can ask Mr. Miller to provide a recommended outline. Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. That's all I had.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion for closed session. I move that the King George County Board of Supervisors convene in closed meeting for discussion of Sedgwick Crossing litigation pursuant to State Code 2.23711A7 for consultation or briefing with legal counsel regarding actual litigation, and State Code Section 2.23711A8 for consultation with legal counsel regarding a specific legal matters.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The opposed, chair votes aye. Motion carries. We are in closed session.
I move that King George County Board of Supervisors return to public meeting and certify by vote that only public business matters lawfully exempt from the open meeting requirements by Virginia law and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convened in the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered during the closed meeting.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. We will take roll call certification. Ms. Bender,
So certify.
Mr. Collins,
Certify.
Ms. Kupka,
So certify.
Mr. Stonehill.
So certified.
Chair so certifies. We are back in open session. I'll have to entertain a motion.
Make a motion to adjourn till Thursday, the 26th or
Third.
23rd at 6 o'clock at the Board of Supervisors office here.
Second.
We have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye. Motion carries. We are adjourned.